Investment prospects in ICT in Africa in 2011?
There are always investment prospects. I suppose it depends what you're buying, what value it represents, and what you're willing to pay for it. What we have seen, for instance, building up over the past maybe couple of years, certainly over the past years, interest by some of the developed markets operators and developing market operators in Africa, out of Europe, France Telecoms / Orange expressing greater interest again, as well as operators out of China, for instance, and India. So there could be greater prospects for investment, as well as further local investment on the part of the larger operators and participants, as well as on the part of smaller operators, and possibly government institutions to try and build out more underserved area networks.
I mean, we do know that in countries like Kenya, the rate of growth is over 40%, and we know that the rates of return on investment have been above 13%. Is that still the case?
Well, it has to slow down as the market matures. It's not sustainable. It will continue growing at fast rates. And even if we look at Kenya, it is a market that's already nearing its 50% SIM card penetration. So still room for growth. However, that growth is increasingly taking place at market levels with low disposable income levels, and that growth now needs to be transplanted over to the corporate market segment and towards data. So definitely scope for growth, but operators and service providers have to start looking for new revenue streams, and apart from that, it's becoming increasingly competitive, and normally competition and other factors drive prices down. Therefore, they take value out of the market for everyone that participates in that market.
I mean, you mentioned in terms of consolidation, the kinds of partnerships we're likely to see, but who are the players to watch in 2011?
Well, I think on a sort of a bird's eye view, there are a number of players that have come in. I think probably the biggest player to watch notably is Bharti Airtel, which came into Africa, acquiring Zain assets in sub-Saharan Africa. And for two reasons. One is because it operates in umpteen African markets, and second reason is because it comes in with a new strategy of a low-cost operator, which it will try to replicate in Africa what it did in India. And it will be interesting to watch whether it's successful, because it will have significant impact on the market. Other players are, as usual, MTN, because there are some changes taking place and undercurrents taking place, and other operators, as I said, maybe perhaps Orange out of France, and trying to expand in Africa, and maybe Vodafone.
Frank, your comments on this one, particularly MTN, because that's been the story that's headlined over the last 3 weeks. New CEO, restructuring of the group system, even talk of possibly moving offshore internationally. How's that going to shake things up?
Well, I think that if I look at the new group president and CEO coming into the business, he is an insider. It shows me that there was a good succession plan. I don't see a shake-up of MTN and the way they do business. However, as we have heard, it is a maturing market, so we have to start looking for growth in other areas. Africa itself, it has some growth left in the numbers, but we have to also look at different products and product diversification into data and other users, possibly for airtime. I don't see it. As far as the rumors of selling off SA, I don't buy it at this stage yet. I think it's one of the crown jewels of South Africa at this point. And I don't see strategic why, because it's not as if it's a loss leader. In fact, it contributes large revenues to the group itself.
Your comments on that?
Along similar lines, South Africa still contributes in the region of 30% of revenue plus, with its move, or MTN's move, into corporate data services, managing data networks, providing fixed line type services. South Africa is the leader, and it is being used to replicate that model in other operations. However, I think from the restructuring of MTN and looking at MTN Group versus MTN International, there is an attempt to try and separate South Africa out of that MTN International fold in order perhaps to make future M&A activity easier in markets outside of South Africa.
Emphasis obviously on data services and emphasis on quality. And this raises the question of rolling out 3G, 4G networks. Are we in a bit of a rush in Africa?
A rush? Well, I don't know, we've had quality problems for a number of years, so it's high time we corrected them, and they have been, are being addressed and have been addressed by operators up to date, or up to this time. There's certainly a need for better quality services, and particularly when it comes to, I think, a greater data product choice and quality, and that as well in most sub-Saharan African markets.
Right.
And that's where operators are putting emphasis on across the board, but larger operators such as MTN and Airtel and Vodafone/Vodacom looking at the business market segment.
And Dobek, we are seeing an interesting phenomenon where fixed line operators are morphing, as it were, into mobile operators. Telkom introducing ATA in Kenya. We're seeing Telkom Kenya partnering with France Telecom to partner with Orange, those sorts of things happening. How do fixed line operators make themselves relevant at this stage?
Yeah, it's on two fronts. Telkom perhaps is a latecomer to that market, and fixed line operators have been branching onto mobility for quite a number of years now. But they are still relevant, particularly when it comes to now servicing the corporate market segment with data, but corporate data services, managing networks. In those countries such as South Africa, where Telkom has a good network, it becomes more and more relevant as a wholesaler and retailer of these services, moving into IT services, where that infrastructure lacks or a strong operator lacks as an incumbent. That's why we're seeing mobile operators moving into that as an opportunity.